Maloney Votes, a series of forums featuring candidates for local and state offices. I'm Sheila Maloney, Executive Editor of the Newport Daily News, and we're here live on Wednesday, October 15th. This year we are combining the Daily News editorial board meetings and televised candidate forums on NCTV 18. First, I would like to introduce the other members of the Daily News editorial board, publisher Albert K. Sherman Jr. and opinion page editor Gary Ruff. We will use the information provided in these meetings in election previews that will run in the Daily News the week before the election, as well as in determining any endorsements that we make. And tonight we are pleased to welcome 10 of the 16 candidates for 7 seats on the Tiverton Town Council. The candidates are Joanna Ruda, Donald Bolin, Michael Burke, Christopher Cotta, Louise Durfee, Jay Lambert, Cecil Leonard, Edward Roderick, Roger Winiarski, and Judith Sarambi. Thank you all for being here tonight. Before we start, some general guidelines about how these forums work. There are no formal opening or closing statements, and there is no formal time clock for answers, although we ask candidates to limit their answers to allow for as many questions as possible. As the moderator, I have the discretion to refocus answers and answers that run long or ask a follow-up question. We will start with the first candidate in alphabetical order and give each candidate an opportunity to respond, rotating who receives a question first. I will strive to give each candidate approximately equal time. So let's get started. Joanna Ruda, we'll start with you. As an incumbent, what was the key factor in your decision to run for re-election, and what particular qualifications do you feel you bring to the position?
Thank you, Sheila. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Newport Daily News as well as Cox Cable for giving us this opportunity to come out and speak live. But what I feel is that I feel that there is still a lot of work to do, and we were involved in a lot of very important issues this year as it relates to the budget, as it relates to the town on a whole, you know, personnel, hiring, and just keeping things working in the town. We've been a great council that we've heard each other out, worked together, and it's something that I'd like to continue to do. As far as my qualifications, this will be my 3rd term should I be elected, and I try to keep myself up to date with all the issues and the you know, whatever comes up in the town. I try to attend all different types of committee meetings, mainly the planning board and the zoning board. Go to budget committee hearings when those budget committee is in session. So it's with those types of things that I think that I can bring a fair and balanced thought process to keeping Tiverton as we would like to keep it. Thank you.
Thank you. Don Bolin, and thank you, Joanne. I wanted to remind the candidates that you're sharing microphones, so if you could speak directly into the microphone, the viewers at home will be able to hear you. As an incumbent, what was the key factor in your decision to run for re-election, and what qualifications do you bring to the job?
I think one of the reasons I decided to run again was the fact that we knew we were going to have at least 3 changes on the council. 3 of the incumbents were not going to run again. I think there needs to be some continuity in councils. It's imperative that people who understand what's been taking place, you know, continue to make sure that those issues get resolved and not take, you know, a backseat or get forgotten. We have some major issues, whether it be development in industrial park, the land contamination issues on Bay Street, and so forth. And I think you need continuity to see those issues resolved in fair and equitable manner.
Okay, thank you. Michael Burke, you are a challenger for town council, but no stranger to elected office in Tiverton. What made you decide to run for town council this year?
Well, there were the opportunities that Mr. Bolin mentioned, and certainly I think that as a member of the school committee, I've done a good job, we've done a good job of handling some very difficult issues in some tight budget times with dwindling resources coming from the state and federal government, and still have been able to keep high-quality schools, been able to get control over our contractual obligations. And so I think bringing that to the table, in the other pieces, we've been able to work well together with a wide diversity of opinions on our committee. And I think I bring that to the council. I am fairly knowledgeable about the council. I've been on the school committee for 6 years, but prior to coming to Tiverton, I was a representative of town meeting, elected representative town meeting member in Milford, Massachusetts, where we lived. So I've been heavily involved in municipal politics wherever I have lived. And I think that I bring some fresh blood to the table at the council, but still with the ability to work with the other members, bring the diversity of opinions together and come up with solutions that will work for Tiverton.
Okay, thank you. Christopher Cotta, same question to you. Not a stranger to elected office in Tiverton, but running for town council. Why?
I opted this year to run for town council because of the 3 vacancies that were on coming up this year. I've spent a long tenure with the budget committee, as chair of that committee for a number of elected terms now. I've got a pretty good breadth understanding of how the municipality operates on basically all aspects of the financial end, and I felt with the vacancies that it would be a prudent time for me to jump in and try to run for town council so I could exercise some policy decisions that need to be effectuated in the coming years to help with the exploding tax rate that we've been seeing over the last couple of years. Beyond just the budget committee aspect of where the community knows me from, I also manage a law firm of about 235 employees, about $23 million. It's a pretty substantial office. And I'm also a director on the National White Collar Crime Center, which is another 110 employees that I help manage with a budget of about $13 million. Knowing all the facets of how those entities operate and the trials and tribulations that we have to deal with dwindling resources on a daily basis, I'm hopeful that people will recognize that I have the ability and talent to help move the community forward.
Okay, thank you. Louise Durfee, as an incumbent, what was the key factor in your decision to seek re-election for another year?
I think it was
Or another term, sorry.
some of the issues that the town is going to be faced with. And a couple of them have been mentioned, but I personally believe we're going to have 2 very tough financial years. And I think that the experience that you develop, it's not even a choice, you just develop it having served on the council, will be helpful in getting the cooperation of other people that we will need to get. Also, I think the, Don mentioned this, the Bay Street case is one of the most intractable cases we have been faced with. It has a monetary risk to the town, as we are finding out. And having at least the history of that case, which has gone through, it's very important that that be settled if we can settle it. And if we can't, we have to take other alternatives to bring it to a conclusion. But that is a major issue in the town. It affects a good portion of the town. So it's easy to run from something like that. It's rather complex, but that's not my nature. So that's really why I decided to. But there was really 2 issues that are, I think, going to be very important in the couple of years ahead.
Okay, thank you. And certainly we hope to spend some time getting into some of those other issues that are facing the town in a little bit more depth. Jay Lambert, as a challenger, what made you decide to run for town council this year? And what qualifications do you bring to the job?
This is the only year. I've never held a political office. I'm a retired attorney. I was a partner in a large law firm in Philadelphia, and I planned to retire here in Tiverton, and we moved here 5 years ago. Several things convinced me to run. I attended both sessions of the financial town meeting this year. Later, I would get a tax bill that indicated my taxes had gone up 9%. And I have a town council that was pushing for an 11% tax rate increase. But even with that, that wasn't what made me decide to run. With absolutely nothing better to do one day, I drove from the Sakonnet River Bridge up to the State Avenue just to count for sale signs. And I counted 27 for sale signs. And that didn't include every single one of the empty commercial buildings and all of the for lease signs. I made the decision to run because I'm convinced we can do a better job here in Tiverton. We have to make this town affordable to the average citizen. We have to do something to control the taxes. We have to do something to broaden the tax base, and we have to do something to bring in some commercial and industrial properties. That's why I'm running.
Okay, thank you. And just a reminder to candidates to speak into the microphone so that the viewers at home can hear you. Cecil Leonard, you spent some time on the town council. Why did you decide to run for election this time around?
It was a combination of factors. The first one being that given the state of affairs, particularly in the state of Rhode Island, but generally nationally also, I think that there are going to be some very difficult challenges ahead. And with vacancies on the council, I thought it would be a good opportunity to return. I have good experience in terms of starting with life experience. I've raised a family. I've gone through a lot of the struggles that the younger families are going through. I can still vividly remember sitting around the kitchen table with my wife at the month end deciding, well, we're going to pay this bill this month and we're going to not pay this one this month, and then doing the same thing the following month. Coming with a world of experience in the corporate world, managing major corporate entities. And for the past 10 years, I've had a second career, I want to say a wonderful second career, as a department chair and a professor at Bristol Community College. So I bring a particular set of experience from the education side of it. But I think the combination of my experience, I've been active in a variety of roles in town government for the last 10 years, and I think I have some unique qualifications and experience and familiarity to help solve the problems that are almost surely ahead of us.
Okay, thank you. Edward Roderick, as a challenger, what made you decide to run for town council this year, and what qualifications do you bring to the job?
One of the things, obviously, like Mr. Lambert had said, I had gone to the financial town meetings also and was a little disappointed in the way things went. But I come from the school that you don't have a right to complain unless you're willing to do something about it. And I firmly believe that one of the reasons that I'm running is that when I moved to Tiverton, I moved here because I saw a community that I really fell in love with and wanted to become a part of. And also, I saw that, like Jay, I saw there were businesses not open, the tax burden kept rising, and something had to be done. And I do commend the present council because I know they've probably done everything they can do, but I think there's time now to have a new set of eyes and maybe look at some other opportunities that maybe the town of Tiverton can to reduce the tax burden on the average homeowner. My qualifications are that for the past 25 plus years, I've been in public and affordable housing. I've had to deal with federal budgets, federal budget cuts. I've learned how to seek grants under stones, as they say. And again, I think it's my love of the town that really made me want to run. And I feel that I can bring a fresh breath of fresh air and to maybe look at things a little bit differently and pursue other avenues of revenue by looking maybe outside the town and making Tiverton more appealing to businesses. And again, I'm not the advocate of big box
And we're going to get into development issues, hopefully, as one of the questions.
Right.
So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And Roger Winiarski, you're also a challenger. What made you decide to run for town council, and why this year?
I recently retired from the military after 43 years of active and reserve service in the Navy Reserves. I don't feel I'm done yet of giving of myself. I've been a Tiverton resident for well over 50 years. During that time, I have been an assistant harbor master. I've been on civil defense. I'm presently a member of the Harbor Commission. I'm a founder and owner of a business in Tiverton. I've always been an idea person and an inventor. Tiverton should and could be doing more things to ease the tax burden, things that we are not doing now that I would like to at least explore. Will they all work? No, probably not. But I think some of them will, and transfer the burden elsewhere from the backs of the taxpayers. I'd like to bring my ingenuity, my ideas, to the Tiverton Town Council Because as I said, I'm not done yet in serving my country or my community.
Okay, thank you. And Judith Zarambi, you're also a challenger this year. Why did you decide to run for town council and why this year? And just a reminder to move the microphone if you would. Thank you.
I live in the town for 5.5 years, and I too love the town. And I kind of agree with this whole board. The difference is that I believe we have to bring industry in this town, and that we're facing a tremendous, tremendous amount of problems. I see in my own neighborhood over 40 homes are up for sale. People are scared. They want change. We have so many things coming up that we have to face. And I believe that change this year is going to be very important. Not all change is good, but as Ed said, you look through it at a different eye and you see a new perspective, and that's what I believe. So again, thank you very much for having me here tonight.
Okay, thank you. So let's dive into some of the issues then, and into the pressing issue that everybody's sort of referenced tonight. And it's a pressing issue in Tiverton as well as other communities, and that's finances. Don, we'll start with you this time. This year's budget would have required some $2 million in cuts if voters at the second part of the financial town meeting hadn't approved a measure to exceed the state cap, which officials said was necessitated by school bond issues coming due. Did you support exceeding the cap or not? Would you support such a measure if it happened again next year? Why or why not?
I support
And
it.
just as a preface, the next question will certainly get into more of the revenue versus taxes side. So this specifically talking about the budget and exceeding the cap.
I supported exceeding the cap in the last budget. It was necessary because of the school bonds that were passed in 2004. I think some people were relatively new to Tiverton and were unaware that this was coming due. So it may have been a surprise to some people. I think we really have to take a hard look in the upcoming year to try not to exceed the cap. I don't know if that's going to be possible. We are way too early, and we are seeing too many things around us that are going to have major effects on what every city and town does in terms of budgets. But I know that I'm going to do my best to try to make sure we have a budget that doesn't have to exceed the cap. But I'm not sure if it's possible. So it's you're asking somebody, to commit to something, here in October that's going to take place, next May, without having, all of the revenue numbers, and so forth in place. But I think it's the goal of the council, of any council, not to try to exceed that cap, without cutting, the major items that we have. If we have to make major cuts, then we have to really consider how we handle police, fire, some of the major, support staffs we have, and how you do that, with the collective bargaining agreements in place, and whether or not you can get concessions from some of those people. It's a difficult task. Going to try like heck not to have to exceed that. But, I don't sit here and make promises I can't keep.
Okay, thank you. Mike, your thoughts on exceeding the cap. If you supported it, would you support it again, and why or why not?
I think one of the most important things to start with in answering that is to recognize the hard work that was done by the town council, the budget committee, and the school committee in doing everything we could to find savings that we hoped would keep us under the cap completely, including with the bonds. We weren't able to do that for a variety of reasons. One of the other pieces that is important to note, we talk a lot about the school bond portion of the bond debt, which is a significant portion, about 73%. But the other 27% or so is primarily the TIF bond for the sewers, which benefited, for example, the villages of Mount Hope Bay. That bond, as opposed to the school bond, which was approved by the voters and which had a very extensive publicity campaign, and certainly Chris to my left was one of the most vocal people saying, look, folks, this is what this is going to do to the tax rate, just to let you know. So for those who say that there wasn't enough publicity about the effect on the tax rate, they weren't here, like Don said, or they were not listening. But in terms of the TIF bond was not voter approved. So there's a big portion of that bond debt that was not voter approved that we're also paying for. So in going forward, I think I'd have to respond similar to Don. It's very hard to say what's going to happen, but I do know that I have trust in our school committee, our budget committee, and our town council, whomever sits there, that they have a lot of hard work to do to try to keep under the cap as best as possible.
Okay, thank you. Chris, your thoughts in terms of the cap? Did you support exceeding it? Would you support it again? Why or why not?
I'm probably being blamed for it, let alone supporting it. And
They're all saying, the gentleman over there.
yeah,
Yes.
well, I've got broad shoulders. I've dealt with many issues on the budget committee for many, many years in a variety of venues, whether it be controversy with the schools, fire departments, other departments. And at least I have, from my own standpoint, I believe I've brought fair, honest, and open, and answered any question as best that our committee could to fully educate the public about what the issues were. And this past year, there are a number of issues, and it wasn't just the school bonds. There are a significant portion of it, but we're also missing $900,000 in revenue, which is comparable to what the school bonds were. And people want to accuse me of stripping the town surplus. But we had been at the cap for a number of years, and every time in any community that is at the cap doesn't have the ability to tax, as we had in the past, to deal with uncollectibles and abatements. And those are significant monies that year after year, when we're below the cap, when you properly budget for those, it does create a surplus in the general fund. And every year after, you take those monies and you offset the succeeding tax rates, and you go on a cyclical basis. When you go a couple of years and you can't do that, you have diminished the value of the fund. That hurt and was one of the causing effects. That's going to happen again next year. I'm not going to belittle what happens with the general fund reserve, but quite frankly, we're not setting aside money to help offset and augment our available resources. And next year there'll be another $10 million. So I can't say that we're going to cut $2 million in next year's budget, but there is going to be some very systemic issues that are going to have to be looked at, and I hope I have the ability to at least delve into them and come up with some reasonable solutions.
Okay, thank you. Louise, your thoughts on exceeding the cap this past year, and if you come up against that again, and into the microphone.
First of all, any council is going to try to stay within the cap. Let me just give you an example. The first budget that the town council got was in January 10th. I remember it distinctly. Mm-hmm. And it was a 4.4 increase. And we said no. Over the next probably 3 months, we got it down to 1.4. And the school committee, working with the school committee, they came in at 2.3, well below the cap. The council, any council, is going to try to deal with that. But as people have said, we were faced with the school bond issue, the permanent financing, and the permanent financing is important because we get a 30% subsidy from the state, both interest and principal, if it is permanently financed. But we have to pay the bonds, or we get taken over by the state, I suspect. And the general fund, because it hadn't been built back up because there had been a cut in state aid, which we had not anticipated. The the transfer fees were way off, the fees were way off. But we had been using, as Chris outlined, the monies in the surplus account to keep the tax rate as low as possible. We're going to be doing probably the same thing. We built our budget with 3.5 layoffs. Plus, our administrator is also working as the treasurer until the election takes place at savings to the town. When I hear the town council proposed an 11% increase, that is foolish talk, and it's not true. We proposed, on the municipal side, which we have authority over, 1.4. The tax impact of that, because of the increase in assessments, was 0 on the tax rate. That trend will continue, but nobody's sitting here And there are some things that we can all look at to increase revenues. But I'm not one to say that what the economic crisis that we are in globally started with the Tiverton Town Council. So I did want to get into some very specific figures because I think as we go forward, we have to be mindful of where we started in this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Jay Lambert, your thoughts in terms of the exceeding the cap, and did you support that or not? Would you support it again? Why or why not?
I'm not going to argue with Ms. Durfee as to what the tax rate increase was. What I would suggest to every voter is go back, take a look at the tax bill that you got this year, and you'll be able to figure it out yourself. Just compare what it was the previous year, and you're going to see it's 9%. You can play around with the numbers, but it still comes down to 9% for the average taxpayer. And when I'm talking about playing around, I'm just going to hit on one item that's been raised both by Ms. Durfee and Mr. Carter. In the last 3 years, we have gone over the cap each and every year. It's not just this year. And in the 39 municipalities in this state, only 8 went over the cap last year, and no town other than Tiverton has gone over the cap each of the last 3 years. When Ms. Durfee and Mr. Carter refer to using the general fund, let me tell you what they're doing with the general fund. In the last 5 years, they've transferred $4 million from the general fund to cover the tax rate increases. That's tax money you previously paid. That was a piggy bank that the town had. And the reason part of our taxes went up this year is not because we had a shortfall of $900,000 in income. That's not true. What happened is we went to the piggy bank and we discovered that unlike last year, when we did have $900,000 in the piggy bank, we had nothing this year. That's not a loss of income. My bottom line is that this town has to learn to become fiscally responsible, or we're making the town unaffordable for the average citizen.
Okay, thank you. Chris, Cotta, or Louise, I would just ask the $4 million figure particularly, moving $4 million over the past 5 years from the general fund to offset tax increases, is that an accurate number?
Let me just add it up for you.
I would say it's more like 3.6.
3.5,
Yeah.
3.5.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
close, but it's also taken completely out of context, which is, it's his prerogative to speak the way he wants, but he doesn't understand how taxation works. He really doesn't, because it's not
And
what
let me
he's
tell you,
saying.
Mr. Carter, I'm not going to defer to your knowledge. You're the one that contributed to getting us into this mess.
Thank you.
So don't point to anybody else and try to
didn't
suggest
point,
you have
Mr.
Lambert.
more common sense
Okay,
in
thank you,
working out
Mr.
these
Lambert, and
problems.
thank you, Mr. Cotta. And we still have several more candidates to get to. Briefly, Louise?
Very. One of the reasons is that as we have gone over the cap, it is because we paid bonds for the high school, the Fort Barton. We have 3 new, and the elementary school. So every single year, we have had an added burden of school bond issues. That was voted by the taxpayers in 2003. But chickens come home to roost, and they came home to roost as you pay off the bonds on the schools.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. Cecil Leonard, your thoughts in terms of exceeding the cap last year and if that issue could come up again, should come up again this year?
Let me approach it this way. First, let me say that on a principle basis, I do not want to exceed the cap. I don't think anybody does. So I definitely do not want to exceed the cap. I think that it's very risky, given the times, to take a position, I will never vote to exceed the cap. It's almost, I think I'm not going out on a branch too far. State aid is going to be probably less in the coming year than it's been. So we're going to be facing new problems, and I don't want to foreclose anything we may have to do, nor do I want to mislead any voter and say, I'll never vote to exceed the cap. It all depends on the situation. There are critical town services that have to be protected and have to be provided. and it so may very well may be that the least worst choice is to avoid the cap. As to the recent one, I did not support exceeding the cap to the dollar value that it was. I'm in the great political position is I've got a foot on each side of the fence. I think that the outcome of funding the town as it was generally good. I would have liked to seen more work done to see if we couldn't have reduced the amount that we had to go over the cap. And given the way things played out, that didn't have a chance to do it. Now, there was a reduction of $250,000 some odd dollars, so there was some reduction. But I think if the Budget Committee would have had an opportunity to go through the budget as they indicated they would probably do, I think we probably could have lessened the amount that we exceeded it.
Okay, thank you. Ed, and thank you. Just another reminder, I keep getting reminded, talk into the microphones. Your thoughts on exceeding the cap?
Again, nobody wants to exceed the cap, and that was one of the reasons why I did get involved, because I felt that the increase over the cap in the last financial town meeting was higher than I think it should have been. Did I think it was going to be more than the 5% cap? Yes. Did it need to round out to the 9%? I don't think so. But again, I think the town council, the school committee, and the budget committee all need to work together on fiscal responsibility. We know that with the fiscal crisis that this state is facing, this nation is facing, that funds are going to be very, very difficult to come by. And so everyone is going to have to tighten their belts. And I'm not a proponent of cutting services. I believe that the town residents of Tiverton deserve the best services that we can afford. But I think the town in total has to look and see where belt tightening can take place. The average homeowner, I think, is being stretched. Walking around the town campaigning in the last few weeks, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people telling me that they're afraid that they may have to move. They love Tiverton, but they can't afford the taxes. And I think that's one of the things that we have to ensure, that Tiverton remains affordable, because it is a wonderful town and a great place to live, and we want it to continue to be that.
Okay, thank you. Roger Winiarski, your thoughts on exceeding the cap?
I had no intention of running for town council until the financial town meeting, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I didn't like it. I think it was too high. I would be very remiss if I'm elected to the town council in voting for the cap to be exceeded again, unless and until the town council and the school committee looks at economies that could be achieved, and more specifically, additional sources of revenue. There are any number of additional sources of revenue that we could access to bring more money into this town. Tiverton is noted for its volunteerism. There are lots of things that we could do. Would it solve our entire financial problem? No. But every dollar brought into the treasury eases the taxpayer's burden a little bit, and I have a number of ideas. The hour and a half of this session isn't long enough for me to go through them, never mind my short answer now. But there's lots of things I'd like to propose. There's lots of things I'd like to try. There's lots of ways that I'd like to try to take the burden off the taxpayer, go in other directions, bring more money in, and economize. We've got to do both things in unison.
Okay, thank you. And Judy Zarambi, your thoughts on exceeding the cap?
Absolutely not this year, not where the economy is. You know, as I listen to everyone in this table, you take the hourglass, is this town half full or half empty? It's all in the way you look at things. We actually need to roll up our sleeves and go to work. We need to bring new business into this town. And there's no ways about it. You just cannot keep taxing the taxpayer. I, too, went to the town meeting and was disgusted. I mean, it has to change. I feel that it's very important to get some industry in this town. We need new businesses and a lot of green jobs, where at least they're not going to be sent off to different countries. Biotechs and wind and solar and many things. So right now, I would like to see new industry in this town, and no, I'm not going to be interested in doing the cap, under the cap.
Okay, thank you. And Joanne, back to you. Your thoughts on exceeding the cap and if that issue came up again next year?
Well, surely, we're all sitting here and we're all participants in the same situation. We're all residents of this town. We all need to come up with solutions, and pointing fingers at one or the other isn't the way to resolve situations. If people have situations, if people have solutions, then they need to come forward and help us, give us your ideas. We'll certainly convene meetings. We convene as many meetings as we possibly can. We spend countless hours together. I'm probably more with these people than I am with my own family. I have to take exception with that. The council and the school committee and the budget committee have to work together. Let me tell you, for the past 4 years that I've sat on this council, that's exactly what each and every one of these people have done, have sat and worked together. But let me tell you when the work takes place. The work takes place from this time of the year right through to the financial town meeting. And let me tell you, no one shows up at any of the budget meetings except for 2 people. And that's myself and Sally Black, and maybe 1 or 2 other people sitting at this table. That's when the work gets done. You can't expect to come to a town financial meeting in May when the work is taking place now, when budgets are being presented by department heads, when the town administrator's coming before us to discuss what cuts they've already decided to make beyond the cuts that we've already told them that we are going to have to make. That's when the work takes place, and that's from January on. I mean, where are these people with their solutions? That's when the work has to take place. You can't come to a town financial meeting in May and try to turn the whole town upside down with trying to come up with $2 million cuts. Cuts from where? And where's your solution? And how would you cut those? Where would you cut them? You can't resolve that in that venue. That has to be done as the work takes place. People aren't showing up to do the work. We're all there doing the work. We're there till God only knows sometimes what hour. And and if we're going to fool ourselves by thinking that, we have to take burdens off the taxpayer, well, let me tell you, I woke up this morning pretty disenfranchised because I heard 2 presidential candidates say that they're going to give taxes, we're going to give everybody a tax break. Another candidate said he is not going to raise taxes. Well, they're telling everyone they're not going to raise taxes. But let me tell you, we've also heard that same thing on the state level. Guess where the taxes have to be? They're forcing the local level boards and commissions and towns, cities and towns to raise these taxes. Now, I'm sorry, but the revenues aren't following the rhetoric. And as far as coming up with solutions, we all have to work together. We're all taxpayers, and not any of us want to see any of us move away or our neighbors move away or not be able to have our children live in the town.
Okay, thank you. So let's start talking about some of the solutions. Let's talk about, and Mike, we'll start with you, specific ideas that you have either on the area of controlling spending or of generating new revenue for the town. A specific idea, either side.
Let me start with the controlling spending and give some good examples of what the school committee and I know the town has done over the past 6 years that I've been in office. And just to echo what Joanne said, when I came to the school committee 6 years ago, there was a lot of negativity among the 3 major committees. That has changed dramatically, 180 degrees since that time. And while we have our differences of opinion and differences of perspective, we have been able to work respectfully and collegially together for many years now. In terms of controlling costs, anybody who's read your paper, the Fall River paper, the Secana Times over the past year and a half knows what the school committee's been up against with our union and how difficult it's been, personally and professionally, to keep putting forward the need to control our contractual obligations. We haven't finished that process yet. We haven't finalized with the NEA yet because we know what we feel is affordable to the town but not going to wreck the school district, because those are 2 competing interests that people don't always recognize. I hear people say, well, let's make the teachers and every other employee in town pay 50% of healthcare costs. Well, that's not realistic at all. And in fact, the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that, people who tell me that, well, business does it, it doesn't fly with the BLS statistics. But a couple other key things. Several years ago, we and the town joined in a group healthcare buying cooperative, which has saved us tens of thousands at least of dollars in our cost for purchasing health care for town and school employees. That's with many other cities and towns and school districts across the state. The town joined us this year, and we've been doing for several years group oil purchasing, which again has saved a significant amount of money. We also are part of several other educational type collaboratives that do purchase supplies, books, etc., on a group basis and the like. And in terms of what else, certainly I would echo what everyone else has said about bringing in businesses. We had a presentation by Keith Stokes recently who really talked about the need, and our Economic Development Commission is working on it, of developing a comprehensive economic development plan that we can then use to really pull in the businesses that we want in Tiverton.
Okay, thank you. Chris, specific idea you have either in terms of controlling spending or bringing in new revenue?
As far as controlling spending, I'd like to echo some of Mike's remarks about how it is that the school committee has gone about trying to contain costs, especially as it relates to salaries and wages. The town council has taken a very firm stance in the last year or so about how they go about assigning a percentage to overall packages, not just a salary increase, but as it relates to the entire compensation package. And those are the types of thoughts that need to be contained. But as it relates to the discretionary funding within the town budget, there is very, very little of it, unless you want to look at eliminating programs altogether. And I'm not of that thought pattern at the moment. I believe we need to continue the way that we have conservatively been negotiating our contracts in school and on the town side. What I would prefer to see is a statewide governmental contract for all benefits, so that we don't have competing interests of, like with the school department, where we have cyclical 3-year contracts that fight against one another to get to the state means. Those are just, they are hurting the communities immensely around the state. And that needs to be stopped. And the only way that's going to happen is through state legislative assistance. As it relates to revenue, one of the key pieces that the community really needs to do, and I know the council has been working very hard at doing, it's very difficult in this climate, is to move our industrial park. We shouldn't be in the real estate business for commercial development. We really need to move that park. And I'm not talking about taking a windfall profit and taking, whatever the monetary proceeds are for that. That needs to put in some sort of annuity, along with the schools, vacant schools, to help offset taxes over a long period of time where we could draw on an annuity. It's not a one-time fix. There are other revenues we should look at, as maximize as many grants as we possibly can, but we really need to look at the services that we're providing for the community to ensure that those are really needed. And if there are any potential cuts, we should make them.
Okay, thank you. Louise, specific ideas that you have either in terms of controlling spending or generating new revenue?
Well, I think insofar as generating new revenue, we have been working on the industrial park. Bear in mind that the industrial park for almost 8 years was out of our control. And it was in the control of two principals who developed Starwoods, or the Village at Mount Hope. In February of this year, it was back in our hands. And I won't get into the litigation or whatever. It's back in our hands. We have been working very closely with Keith Stokes. And as part of a regional compass, he has said to us, light manufacturing space is at a premium on the island. And people would like to become that alternative, not have them go to Fall River. We have an offer for some land on the, and I'm not at liberty to tell you how or what or whatever. We're working on that. We've had some other expressions of intent by companies for additional acreage. Obviously, the economy is going to affect their plans. We are in very active negotiations with the owners of the power plant to put in a new double capacity there. And I think I'm not out of line if I said that would double the income coming into the town, at the very least. That's not a confidential matter. They have not other developers who come in, commercial enterprises, absolutely say to the council, you have got to keep this in confidence. We do not want our competitors to know. And we haven't been in the newspaper, but we have been working very closely on these things, and also working with, because it makes sense to have Newport County, as we talk about regionalization, well, regionalization of industry too. It makes sense to work with the Chamber and with Keith Stokes, because he's also a member of the EDC, and roads can lead to that at the state level. So we have been very busy. We've had meetings with Congressman Patrick Kennedy as to possible help to help us really finish the industrial park, because it has, in many ways, for 8 years, not a lot has happened. Now, that's not to say that the people who had the option and really had control didn't try to work, but it's now back in our hands, and we've been trying to make the most of what we have, because that would really help. And I agree with Chris that, and I have some other ideas too, but I'll hold them.
Okay, thank you. Jay Lambert, specific ideas that you have, either in terms of controlling spending or generating new revenue.
Well, let me first of all say that I agree with Mrs. Aruda when she
Speak into
says
the microphone.
that our budget committee, our town council, and others have worked hard. And that includes Ms. Durfee and Mr. Carter. They deserve credit for that. But I think it really, at this point, comes down, for me, really as a different vision of where we're going in Tiverton and how we're going to get there. In broadest terms, I think, for economic development and in expanding our revenue source in this town, we have to address two issues. One, we have to control the tax rate increases. We can't compete with Fall River at this point. As a matter of fact, we've become non-competitive even with communities like Portsmouth and Middletown. So that's number one. We have to let business people, investors know that we're not going to run amok with the town budget year after year. The second issue is, and this is something I hear over and over again, we have a well-deserved reputation in this town for being anti-business. And you can see that when you make the trip I made from the Sakonnet River Bridge to State Avenue. It's empty building after empty building. No one wants to move a commercial or industrial property into this town. That's why you have 27 for sale signs. That's the second item. We have to convince business people, we have to convince investors that we are business friendly. And until we do that, we're not going to attract any type of industrial development in this town.
Okay, thank you. Cecil, a specific idea either in terms of controlling spending or generating new revenue?
First, let me deal with some realities. And let's not, well, I'll speak only for myself.
This is a political forum. You're going to
Yes.
deal in realities?
Yes, I want to deal in realities. Because I'm not a professional politician. I am not going to promise things that there is no way in heaven that are going to come true. First off, let's set a couple parameters. First, we have to realize we're part of the state of Rhode Island. The state of Rhode Island has either, depending on which numbers you look at, the 5th or 6th highest tax rate in the country. The state of Rhode Island has a reputation, and I have to say lately it's well-deserved, for corruption. It also has a reputation for being anti-business. You can look at Chamber of Commerce polls, you can look at all sorts of industry analysis, and the state of Rhode Island comes out in the bottom time and time again, year in, year out. So let's not kid anybody that we're going to wave a magic wand and people are going to flock to us. The first thing we need to tell the voters is pay attention who you send to the General Assembly, because that's where the changes have to start. You can't keep doing the same thing year in and year out and expect a different result. Now, moving to another reality is everybody on this room is running for a job that only lasts 2 years. Now, moving to the cost control, the meaningful cost control is going to come from cooperative negotiations with a variety of collective bargaining units. Those contracts expire at different times. Some of them will not even expire in the next 2 years. I am not an advocate of going in and trying to strong arm the good and solid town employees and say, you have to sacrifice, you're the problem, et cetera. They're not the problem. They're good, solid people, and I think we have to work together. I do think it's really important that we set an expectation that the town can only afford so much. And when I was on the council, I saw this before. You know, you could have a department head, and they were up for a raise. Well, they've done a good job, and we want to give them a big raise. Well, at some point, you have to say, no, we can't give you any more of a big raise, and we appreciate what you've done, but if you want to make more money, Mr. or Ms. X, you have to go to a town that has a bigger budget than we do. And that's a real hard expectation to set. There are limits to what the town can afford. You know, if I've run businesses that had $20 million of revenue. We could not compete with a Fortune 500 to hire the brightest and best. What we did was hire young, capable people, took advantage of their talents while we could, and wished them well when they went on to bigger jobs. Quickly on the revenue income side, I would like to explore more, is there any way we can work with the power plant perhaps to, for example, have a wholesale distribution rate that we could offer to businesses in town, for that matter, maybe even residences. Another thing that has not been tried before and is really looking to the future is that there is a lot of technologies out there in terms of providing broadband internet connection better than what we have now. Some of those technologies can be joint income with the town, but even if that's not possible, I think for the future we need to be high-speed internet connected. So one way or the other, we've got to develop that capability.
Thank you.
And I could talk
you
a
all
long
could.
time.
You're all, well, we're trying to get to some of the solutions, so this is good. Ed, your specific ideas in terms of either controlling spending or generating new revenue?
Well, I think on the controlling the spending side, I think that, again, the entire town has to work together and look at where belt tightening can take place, and again, without impacting services unless you absolutely have to. I personally will say this. I think the days of entitlement are through. I think that the days of 100% or 95% paid health, fully paid benefits or fully paid health benefits upon retirement are done. We cannot afford them. The state can't afford them. The town can't afford them. So I think those are areas that, as contracts come up, those are the tough negotiations that are going to have to take place. And, you know, and again, I firmly believe that the employees in the city, in the town of Tiverton, are great people, and they deserve everything that we can give them. But, like everybody else, we all have to tighten our belts a little more.
Yep.
On raising revenue, I think that it's critical. You know, they've all said that Tiverton has a reputation for not being business friendly, and so does Rhode Island. Well, living outside of Tiverton, I can tell you one of the perceptions was that Tiverton was a small rural town and wanted to stay that way. And that's one of the reasons why I came here. But in also looking at our location, we are absolutely in an ideal location. We're on the way to the Cape, we're on the way to Newport. I mean, what better location to have businesses come into this area, tourists, restaurants, small shops, those types of things. You look at our sister towns, Warren and Bristol, and what they have done, taken a small downtown and made it a mecca. Tiverton Four Corners is a small microcosm of what could happen all along Main Road. And again, I don't want this to become the Cape Cod, you know, of Rhode Island, but those are the things that need to be brought into town to ease some of the tax burden. There are other things that can be brought into technologically, like wind power, and I know the council is working on that. In fact, I was at the town council meeting when they were discussing it, which is great. Those are the types of industries that are green industries that are going to bring dollars into town. one of the things that a lot of people are upset with, that we live in a town where you cannot buy groceries. You have to go to Fall River, or to Westport, or to Newport, or to Portsmouth, but you can't shop in your own town. And I think those are the types of things that we have to make sure that for all the residents of Tiverton, that we're bringing those types of businesses into town that make this a more business-friendly and a more resident-friendly town.
Okay, thank you. Roger, specific ideas. You said that you could fill up a whole forum with them, so give us your best shot. Specific idea, controlling spending, generating revenue.
We should never give up our quest for economy, but that can only go so far without jeopardizing public safety. What we really need to do is bring in more revenue. Grants. There are federal grants, there are private funding grants. To use a terminology from when I was playing high school basketball, we should have an all-court press on going out after every conceivable grant that there is. That would be a big one. We have a school system that either now or very shortly in January, when the new schools are completed, will have beautiful campuses. Yet the schools are only used a few hours a day. The kids go home at 2 or 3 o'clock. Why not use the schools after that? Why not hold public education classes for a fee, for a profit? Teach lots of things that the residents, either of Tiverton or from surrounding towns, would like to know. Computer education. There's an awful lot of older adults that are just not computer literate. Elder care. Hold courses in that. Hire teachers, bring them in, pay them, and make a profit on the courses that they teach. There's a whole long list of courses that could be done. There are other trade shop schools, private education schools that have campuses in other parts of the state. Could we rent our school system to them for evening classes, weekend classes? That could bring in a lot of money. Are we going to solve our entire budget problem by any one of these things? No, we're going to have to do a whole lot of them. We should be bringing in new industry. The industrial park one, certainly. I'd also like to see more small specialty shops run by craftsmen. Someplace where you can go and buy a suit not off the rack but have it made. Go to a bakery that actually bakes its own bread instead of brings it in frozen and thaws it out. Go to a butcher shop where you can choose your cut of meat. Does this cost a little bit more? Yeah, but there are people in the town that would like to splurge occasionally and do something like that. Let's try to attract not mega polluting industries, but a lot of the small shops, because we're on the way to the Cape, as other people have mentioned, and let people stop here. I have people coming to my business all the time. I recommend Gray's Ice Cream. I say, do you want to eat some of the best ice cream around? Drive 3 miles south. Half the people do it. I send them to the local restaurants. They buy gas in the local gas stations. So my business spreads the money around by having people shop elsewhere. We should be doing much more of this, bringing more people in here, having them spend their money in our businesses. Again, an all-court press on bringing in businesses, but the right businesses. Do we want a tire recycling plant? No, of course not. We don't want a hazardous waste facility. But aquaculture is a big coming industry. We have a long waterfront. A lot of it's unoccupied. We should be looking at that. We can also look at some of the fees that the town charges that haven't been adjusted in many, many years. I'm not saying put them through the roof, but an extra $5 or $10 a year for your mooring, for example. Well, we got 300 moorings at $10 a year. That's an extra $3,000 that we could bring in just on that one fee. So there's a number of things that we could be doing like that. And anyone that's elected to the town council would be very remiss at least not looking at these things and attempting them if at all possible.
Okay, thank you. Judy, specific ideas you have either in terms of controlling spending or generating new revenue?
Well, in generating new revenue, I think the market went out about 4 years ago, and the building has been empty. I believe the building was sold to CVS, or it's just been laying there, doing nothing. No revenue, no tax money, nothing. I'd like to see an upscale store go in, like Trader Joe's or Whole Foods. That's something like you were talking about, and you get your cuts of meat, and yes, it's a little more money. but it's an upscale store. And bringing in the revenue is very important. Also, getting back to the industrial park. I don't know if you all know Hingham or not, but Hingham is a nice little town, and they just put in an upscale street mall. Very different from anything that we've ever seen. And we have those real bakeries where they make the bread, and you have tables and chairs, and sat down, and you eat it, and have pastries with homemade coffee, and you can sit there and read a book. And they have these stores that are not big and not small. They're just wonderful, with all types of books, and it's just a wonderful walking mall. And this is something that I would like to see in my visions for Tiverton. Something big with lots of stores like in North Dartmouth or Swansea? Absolutely not. That's not for us. But we must bring in the money. And also, we live in a budget. You live in a budget. We can't spend what we don't have, and that's what's happened in this country. If we have $10,000, so you spend $15,000, and it finally catches up with you, and that's what's happened. So we need fiscal responsibility, but definitely we need a blood transfusion. We need money to be brought into this town. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Joanne, specific ideas you have either in terms of controlling spending or generating new revenue?
Well, in terms of controlling spending, we are actively, negotiating. We're not renegotiating. We're going to have to start looking at negotiating some of the contracts, of course, that are already before us. But we've had with the help of Brian Medeiros on this council, bring in and educate us all in the town regarding wind power and the energy savings and the cost savings behind any of those renewable energies, and we're certainly actively looking into those types of things. And as far as the grocery stores, and of course we'd all want to see a grocery store here, but we have to have the type of grocery store that this town is going to be able to afford to shop there. If we have these high-end grocery stores, then I'm sorry, but we can't compare ourselves to Hingham. Hingham is a different socioeconomic climate there. We are a very diverse population here in Tiverton, and I celebrate that. And as far as development goes, the CVS stores are in the process of being before the planning board right now, and they will be. I believe their first preliminary plan just got approved, and that is on the track now. We also have an artist community that will be being developed very shortly too, and that's Sandy Woods, and that's over there behind the recreational area in Bulgamarsh Road. But everyone here has had to say about keeping the town rural, but at the same time that comes with the price. Everybody wants businesses and businesses and businesses, but when you call in these businesses, now what we have is a footprint that's already been designed for the town, which is called a comprehensive community plan, that kind of manages and maps out where the town will be going and how it will get there and what businesses that the town would want to see. Several years ago, there was a charrette done, and people came out from the town, and there was, certain developers there that were very interested in working in doing a mixed-use, community-type development there. But, he had some challenges and had to go away. But it doesn't mean that these things aren't being done. They certainly are being done. And as far as, the cost savings, when we just gave raises, it wasn't giving raises willy-nilly just because we liked somebody and they thought they did a good job. We were trying to maintain the professional department heads that we have and trying to keep their salaries in competition with other surrounding towns. We have an excellent force of department heads and staff, and that's what we were trying to do. So, I think cost containment and revenues are in the mix. We have been doing that. And as I will say, my mantra will be, we have to go out there, we have to watch and see exactly what's going on in the town to exactly know.
Thank you, Don. When you get a chance, certainly. Don, let's just finish this question.
Sure.
In terms
First of all, we have been doing everything possible to contain cost. We worked on a budget last year and went through it time and time and time again to try to recognize any place where savings could be had and we address them. We will do the same thing again this year. We will look at some of the same items. We'll probably make more cuts to some of those same items. Those things are going to happen. As far as generating revenue, we have not turned away anyone who's come to us with a proposal for in Tiverton. The market went away. Why does the market go away? Because we go spend $10 for bread and milk. And when we spend $200 at the end of the week, you go to Fall River and do it at Shores and Stop and Shop. So the little guy, he can't stay in business. He eventually goes out of business. Someone sees that someone didn't succeed, and he wants to come in, and he's going to have a better plan to make it happen. I think you have to show you're going to support something in order for something to want to be here. That's what we need to do. We need to show that there's a community spirit in keeping small businesses in Tiverton. Four Corners thrives because Four Corners has a uniqueness. That uniqueness doesn't exist up and down Main Road. It would be nice to get it there, but you get to develop something once. Then it takes 20 years to redevelop it. So the development that's taken place, now we have to try to fit into something that's going to be a benefit in the community. Every council I've had the pleasure to sit with has tried its best to bring business to town, to get businesses to come and be viable here. We compete with, when we deal with large entities, well, they end up in Connecticut because there was some better tax breaks. Attracting business, they like to play us all off one to the other. Who's going to give me the best deal for me to be here? How much are you willing to give up to get me? We need businesses that like what they see in Tiverton or in any community and want to be in Tiverton because Tiverton has educated individuals who can fill the jobs and the needs that they have, and that we have a community, whether it be our schools and our resources, recreation and so forth, that they want their people to be here. That's what we're going to do if we're going to generate business in town. We're not just going to go out there and say, we're going to bring business to Tiverton, because we have been trying, and believe me, hard. We have looked at every entity coming before us, and we've lost out to other areas and other communities because somebody gave them more tax break. And even with the tax breaks, we got to deal with EDC. The Economic Development Commission in Rhode Island will give everybody all the tax breaks. You want to put manufacturing in Tiverton? That's fine. You get the building and you get the land, because the state gives away the equipment and the computers to run the equipment. They've given them the tax breaks on it to lure them here. So it's a balancing act. And we've been walking the tightrope. And we've been trying to get these companies to come and be in this community. And we think we have something to offer them. There's no magic bullet, and no one sitting here can tell you that they can bring industry or business to Tiverton. Business is going to locate here when we show them we got the community that will support them.
Okay, thank you. Let's switch gears a little bit, and Chris, we'll start with you. Do you support the charter amendment to replace the financial town meeting, and why or why not?
I do support the charter amendment to replace the town financial meeting as proposed by Brian Maderas. Many years, I was a very strong stalwart against eliminating the town financial meeting. I think his proposal has some merits to it. I think the current system that we've been going through over the last few years is very unprofessional. It's very difficult to educate people on an evening of a town financial meeting who have never been to a budget hearing, haven't been to a public hearing, haven't even picked up a docket, and don't even understand what's in it. And I'm not belittling people. People have lives of their own. They have things to do, and they expect their elected officials to responsibly put an appropriate budget out with an appropriate tax rate. I believe the Budget Committee, over at least every year that I've been on it, has been as cautiously, conservatively optimistic that they've provided the services in the budget at a reasonable rate. And I know that there's some contention about that, and that is what it is. But it's been fully explained to the best of my committee's ability every year that I've been there. But I'm finding over the last 4 years or so, it's become overly contentious. by a small vocal group, and I'm not, demeaning that group, that everybody has a right to come out and voice their opinion. But I think it's time for change, and I think Brian has hit on the methodology that I am now at least receptive to. I think that we may have outgrown the town financial meeting.
Okay, thank you. Louise, that's one of the other issues that voters will be faced with in Tiverton. Do you support the charter amendment? Why or why not?
Well, let me tell you, I started off as a proponent of the financial town meeting for years, and I have moved my thinking. And in part, I've moved my thinking because of the whole state cap process that is imposed upon communities, a very great oversight of where they are, what their budget is. That has put a whole new bureaucracy over expenditures. And coupled with the fact that I think the town themselves, internally, do a very good job of coming up with something that is appropriate for the town. We'd all love to see more revenue. Mr. Boland put his finger on it. We can't make the offers on behalf of business. However, the central point really is I have moved my own thinking, and I do support the, we'll call it the Madeiras? Yeah, we'll call it the Madeiras.
He's not running for re-election.
No, he's not. And he has been constant for all his tenure on the town council to move our thinking, and I think he has done that with some success.
Okay, thank you. Jay Lambert, do you support the charter amendment to replace the financial town meeting?
I don't, but admittedly, it's a close question. You can have tyranny of small groups. You can have tyranny of large groups. I would support the present system of the financial town meeting because I think it at least forces the small group, the budget committees, the town councils, to do a better job, to explain in detail what they're doing, to educate the citizens on why we have these services, why we have this budget, why we don't have these revenues. I think it forces the people who and crunch the numbers to justify exactly what they've done.
Thank you.
I would favor having the largest possible group decide where the budget should go.
Okay, thank you. Cecil, do you support the charter amendment to replace the financial town meeting?
I've moved. Originally, I thought the proposal was acceptable. I didn't think it was great for a variety of reasons I won't waste everybody's time with, but it was acceptable. Principally because there is a fail-safe mechanism where if the citizens are really disenchanted, they can ask for a direct vote. Then I went away from the charter for a while and went off and did things, was very busy on my job, etc. And when I came back and looked at the charter, it struck me that the charter was really very carefully crafted over a many-year period with careful separation of power. There's a school committee, there's a town treasurer, there's a town clerk, there's a budget committee, and there's a town council, all independently elected. By giving the town council the purse strings, you now have destroyed, over time, the independence and separation of power. And let me just give you one example. One of the duties of the town treasurer is to monitor the expenditures of the budget items under the control of the town council. So now we're saying, well, ultimately the town council is going to vote the town treasurer, who is an independently elected officer, is going to control their budget. And we all know, you can talk fancy all you want to, but everybody in this room knows that the person that controls the purse strings ultimately has a lot of authority. So because it would go against the long-term and carefully crafted charter and the separation of power, I cannot support it. Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world because of the safety valve, but I don't think it's really in the best interest of the town.
Okay, thank you. Ed, do you support the charter amendment to replace the financial town meeting?
I, too, have changed my mind on this particular amendment. At first, I was totally against it. I felt that the current financial town meeting, the way it was held, was the best for the town. Unfortunately, not enough people come. And I think that's probably the bottom line issue with the present financial town meeting. Again, you know, I was on one side of the issue at the financial town meeting, and others were on another side. But again, that's what makes it interesting. That's what makes politics a lively experiment. But when you're looking to have 6, 8, or 1,000 people make a decision that's affecting 19,000 people, you know, I think we need to look at something else. And I think that probably using the Medeiros amendment, if we want to call it that, is probably, in the long range, you know, the best. I mean, most cities and towns, you know, the city council or the town council, you know, makes that budgetary decision. And I think that as the town grows, as we hope it will continue, and the oversights and the working together on all the budgets, that the town council, you know, will come up with a budget. And again, bottom line, the voters have the final say. Because if they don't like what comes out of the finalized budgets and whatnot, when people are up for re-election, they'll have to pay those consequences.
Okay, thank you. Roger, do you support the charter amendment to replace the financial town meeting?
Like most of the people here at this table, I've gone back and forth in my mind half a dozen or a dozen times, and I've come down on one side or the other at one point in time or the other. I think I finally decided that I don't like the change. I prefer the financial town meeting, and the solution is to fix the financial town meeting, make it better. One of the things that I would like to see happen is an email newsletter put out by the town council, going out at each council meeting or every other council meeting, at least once a month, preferably twice a month, perhaps 2 pages long, because email letters are for free, just about, no big cost to the town. Letting people know what the issues are, what the thoughts are on the budget, what the council is doing, make the council more visible, make the council more transparent, let the people stay up on everything. During their coffee break at work, they can read the email newsletter. That way, when the people come to the financial town meeting, they can come and not have to be educated. They can come with knowledge already and vote the way that they feel best at that financial town meeting. So, as I say, it was a near-run thing, but I'm going to come down on the side of keeping the financial town meeting.
Okay, they can also read the newspaper. Judy, charter amendment to replace a financial town meeting, are you in
No,
favor
I
of that?
don't like the Medeiros charter. I think I'd like to keep it the same, but after thinking about it, I'd like to see it changed. In the beginning, I really didn't, okay? I'd like to see it go to Saturday at 9 o'clock. When I first thought about it, I was against it. I'd keep it Wednesday, but I do believe it should be more open to people. They don't understand when they come, everything is done. They just don't understand what's happening. They go in, they get a pile of paper, they're supposed to read it in a half hour, and you're supposed to know what it's all about. I've been there. It's very frustrating. You go up, you ask questions, boom, it's over, and they get what they want anyways. My problem is that I believe that the town council just has too much power, and I believe in my heart that power corrupts, and I just think that it should change. And they work very hard. Believe me, I know they do, and they put in long hours, but I just think it's time for a change. But I am for Joanna Ruder's change for Saturday at 9 o'clock. And can I just say one thing on, just rebuff and Joanne? Whole Foods and Trader Joe's, okay, they're not so much priced over. They just built a beautiful store in Providence. Now, Providence is not such a wealthy town. It surely could come to Tiverton. It's small enough and large enough. It's just different than the Shaw's Market or the Stop and Shop that you have in Fall River. So thanks, Joanne.
Okay, thank you. Joanne, do you favor the charter amendment? So maybe you should explain your position on the charter amendment.
Well, I've been all over the place on the charter amendment. When I first sat on the council, you know, I felt at that time that we certainly outgrew our usefulness for the town financial meeting as we know it. But over time, as I grew with the town council, I realized that nothing is, it's in the democracy, and nothing's perfect. There's not a perfect solution to it. And we just have to make the best of what we have. I don't have a problem with the town financial meeting as it is, and I would support that. I had initiated a change, just to change it from a day, okay, from a Wednesday to a Saturday in the morning, because when I was talking to people, I had heard that, for younger families, Saturday would be better, and I mean, it's a mix of everything. I don't know, I think there is changes, I think we can make the form that we have already better, maybe with secret ballots, rather than, people raising their hands. People are intimidated by some of the people will get heckled or whatever takes place. But the format, I feel now, allows people to come out, voice their opinion. There's an education process. A council member at any given time, or anybody can get up to that mic and speak their mind, explain why something has happened. Maybe somebody would have been totally against one line item for one reason or another, and it gives people just the understanding of why something had to go that way. I also feel that it gives a good checks and balance, I mean, the council doesn't have any power. I mean, the people have the power. The people of the town have the power to initiate and come down on the budget whichever way, it comes out. But the way I feel now, it's just that I'd like to see maybe us embellish what we already have. And so that's why I would support that it just stay the same for now. We can give it a test try again.
Okay, thank you. Don, do you support the charter amendment to replace a financial town meeting?
Yeah, I was for the financial town meeting until I've seen some disasters. And when I look at a budget, and I look at a budget that's pretty much set because of contractual items and what is left that really can be handled at a financial town meeting, I'm going to favor the change to the charter to have a budget approved by the council, and then the override provision if people are not happy with that. The councils are elected every 2 years. I don't think the council is going to get anyone in any trouble by being the responsible party. For too long, the council's been able to say, not mine. I didn't do this. We brought you information, you took a vote, and can step aside from all of the ugly issues, that surface from financial town meetings. The council, takes a budget from the administrator, and sends it back to him and kind of gives that budget an okay. The budget committee is making the recommendations at the financial town meeting. The council, up until the last 2 years, was really out of the loop in terms of budgets. Only recently, with the last couple of town administrators, the council got really involved with this. But it's about time that the council took the responsibility for the budget and then answer to the people when it comes to these kind of situations every 2 years to say why we did what we did, and in the interim, they have the ability to override anything the council does. But you know what? You want to elect a council, then give the council the responsibility to make the decisions that you're electing them to do. That's what it's all about. That's why we have these elections.
Okay.
So I'm going to support it.
Thank you. And Mike?
I think the Medeiros amendment, as it's being identified, is too big of a leap at this point. So I don't support that at this point in time. However, I do think that the financial town meeting as it exists has outlived its usefulness. I've had, and I said this, I think it was at one of the Charter Commission meetings, I've had the chance to live in 3 different New England towns that had financial town meeting structures, one in far northern New Hampshire where the moose outpopulated the people. And it was very easy to run a financial town meeting there. That's really how a good financial town meeting is designed, where you can get the majority of the voters to that meeting easily. People are really much more easily able to keep attuned to the issues. And then here in Tiverton, where we've really outgrown that direct democracy form of government. But I think an alternative would be something similar to what I was experienced in Milford, where we elected somewhere around 200 or so representative town meeting members. They were tasked with approving the budget as well as some other major decisions in town. The select members were a part of that, as well as some other elected officials in town. And while the voting was restricted to those elected representatives, any voter in town could come and speak to the issues. So it still allowed people to be somewhat enfranchised in the process, but it kept the decision-making to a little bit of a smaller group, a little bit more manageable in terms of having them attuned to the issues. And I think that would be a good next step for Tiverton, as opposed to jumping to the Medeiros Amendment.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to let viewers know that we will actually be talking about the charter amendment in a little bit more detail on Thursday, October 16th, around 7:30 or so on Cox Channel 18. And that's all the time that we have for this forum with the Tiverton Town Council. This forum and similar forums we will be holding with candidates in other contested races for local and state offices will be shown on NCTV 18, Cox Channel 18, a number of times before Election Day on November 4th. I'm Sheila Maloney, and on behalf of the editorial board of the Daily News and the NCTV Access Group, thank you for watching and good night.